Welcome to Grow Overload and this week's installment of Tony Tech Topics. Let's go through some more news that has happened this week. And interesting enough, Seasonic does not think that the 12V 2x6 GPU connector is solid enough. And it's good to see power supply companies recognize that there is a problem with this because it seems like it's not going away at all. And at Computex, they were showing off their little device that they have a solution to monitor the cable itself, and I think DeBauer's been working with something on this like this as well, and this is good. I think that until we mitigate this as much as possible, people are not going to be sure that this connector is going to be solid, and I think there still needs to be some revisions here of this connector then through the standard body to make sure that on the graphics card side, on the power supply, they're fully managing each line can only send a maximum amount of current. I don't like this just send whatever you got, right? And let's just make a total there. That doesn't seem like it's going to be good in the end, but at least Seasonic is, talking about this. They have some power supply stuff too, but at least they're doing and showing off some of the third-party monitoring stuff. So maybe we'll get to a solution to kind of see. And the biggest part about this is that we'll have more data, and we'll be able to tell if that data or what that data is and see where more or where the problem is more stemming from, and maybe we'll get a resolution here sooner than later. But right now, when you're just plugging the connector and it's failing, we don't know all the amps that are going across each line or anything like that. At least this can start telling us some of that, and hopefully we can get to the bottom of it sooner than later, because I really don't like that we're continuing to have these problems even after the 5090 has had them on down. So next one is 80 plus Ruby. So this is the next certification that they're going to have in the 80 plus series of um, of certifications. There we go. There's cybernetics, right? And cybernetics has really taken off. I think cybernetics, for me, is one of the places I go to mostly before I look for 80 plus. I look for cybernetics because they do a really good job. But the Ruby is supposed to kind of be a certification for the data supply side, 96.5% peak efficiency. So you have 80 plus bronze, 80 plus silver, 80 plus gold, 80 plus platinum, 80 plus titanium, and now 80 plus ruby. So this is where we're going. This is good evolution, right, of where stuff is going. And I expect eventually there'll probably be another one, probably what, 80 plus emerald, and then they'll go to diamond or something. So, over time, we want power supplies and innovation to happen there, and then we get more efficient. And this is just another step in there. Now, video cards has also had this as well, which was, how MSI came out with and had their yellow tip power cables for that 12 volt high power, or 12, what is it, 12 by 6 or 12 volt 6 by 2 connector, whatever they're calling it these days. And they said if you see yellow in it, they colored it, and so it will not burn. Well, that's not the case. Somebody in Reddit posted a burnt yellow MSI connector, and I'm not shocked based upon more and more data that we're seeing. It's just a disappointment that even with the dual colored, so people know that it should be plugged in all the way, we're still getting these problems. And some of the other stuff that I've talked about from DeBauer and actual hardcore overclocking Buildzoid, I think a lot of that translates over in this. And over time, I hope it gets fixed, because I still don't have a 12 volt high power. I don't have a 49 or 59 at all. But that's one thing that I would be very concerned about. And that, I mean, even if it is a minor flaw, or minor failure rate, it's still enough that you don't know what's really been going on. And if you are a culprit of, a melted connector, you still got to have a backup, card or something for that to work. So that's just an extra cost in there, and it's really disappointing to see where this is all going. But or the overall scheme of all this going on. And it doesn't seem like Nvidia is putting their oomph behind it to say, we need to get this fixed. The engineering side of cards needs to get better. We need to be monitoring this and just put that level of safety in everything just to make sure we're not having melted connectors all over the place and we can get this put to rest. I feel like this is a really simple issue to put those safety factors in, try to mitigate this, and make sure that the end game is to make sure that the user has the best experience and doesn't run into a melted connector. I, I kind of figure that that's where you want to go, but obviously these companies right now are not worried about that. I mean, Asus is, right? Asus has that um, little piece of software you can run to tell you when something's not working right, which they seem to be the only ones. Well, Seasonic now and stuff that are, but they're the power supply company. But the graphics side of things, seems like no one's really worried about it besides Asus, to making sure that the customer is going to be able to continue to use that card and not run into issues, which I think is a problem. So on that topic, let's jump into ASRock. Now, they've been having the CPU failures, and Techia City has said a lot, and then Techia City did a video talking about this a little bit. I highly recommend you go check it out. And also Gamers Nexus, Steve over there did a great job at talking to, what was it, the head of the motherboard side of things, and they went through. Now, ASRock is saying that they have it fixed, and so hopefully everyone can get this new BIOS. What is it, like 3.25? And within a week or so, this should be um, good to see where the community is on if there's still a failure or if this has fixed it. So I am interested to see. I'll be following it to see if there's um, any more items that pop up here. I'd probably give it a couple 2-3 weeks, but hopefully I mean, I do plan on doing a couple of builds, and this might be an option then for me to do a build on as an ASRock board. I've been a little hesitant because I don't want to have a failure after I build it and then I'm stuck, right? That's never a good sign here. So let's jump over to what else here. Let's do some Nvidia news first, and that's going to be Nvidia's 5060 Ti and 5060 are getting some fixes here. They're getting some firmware stuff to address black screens and reboot issues. So yeah, there's an update tool for the 5060s, and so hopefully people will be able to get these updated and your issues you're having of reboots or black screens are fixed. I think that um, this is good that Nvidia is putting this out there. Of course, it is annoying, right? If you've bought one of these cards and you're having these issues. So hopefully this fix it. Let me know, leave it in the comments below to see if you finally get this stuff fixed, because man, it's been a rough launch for Nvidia on these 50 series. It's been really rough. And the 5090 is below MSRP by 2% looks like in Europe. So yep, you get it a little bit cheaper there. Now, there's been some other prices dipping in Europe as well, and I'm actually shocked that Nvidia they needed to bring this underneath MSRP. Usually, Nvidia is above MSRP on their high-end cars, but that's not the case right now, and that's a little bit shocking to me that they did not keep that up there. So it is Nvidia, right? I expect them to come back to MSRP at some point, but we'll see about that. Now, Nvidia has done China-specific GPUs, and it looks like AMD is going to do the exact same thing for AI chips as well. So I would say they're more AI-specific GPUs, but they're going to do the same thing. And these are restrictions here that the United States companies have to deal with for sending tech into China, and AMD is going to do the same thing that Nvidia did probably just to keep that, to be able to compete with them at the same level that they're at. So it's been jumping over to the next one, which is really interesting to me because I've been looking at different processors, right? I want to do kind of a console equivalent build, about 700, 800 bucks. Probably, I know 800 is a little bit more expensive, and Sony right now is going to do a sale, I guess it's rumored, or they announced it, something like that earlier. But I'm doing, want to do something on the kind of the pro level of the PS5. And if I could get an AI Max for about that price, a board in an ITX, which so far I couldn't be able to find it at this point. Granted, RAM's on there and stuff, and they're more towards $1,000 plus. But that would be kind of interesting to see the comparison of an AI Max to something, the Ryzen AI Max Pro, stuff with there, and then put that into there. But this is a Pro. This is an AI Max Pro 385 processor that was spotted on Geekbench, and WCCF Tech had this, which, that had, what was it? How many GPUs did it have in it as well? I know it was a 16 core, or 16 core. It was an 8 core, 16 threads, and it was the 8050S with only 8 compute units. So, let's see. Did I read this right? Give me 1 second. Yeah, eight compute units. Remember this, my numbers are getting all mixed up by reading this beforehand. But it's got the 8 compute units, 50 tops. So, it is something that would be really interesting for this. And, the 50 tops NPU, 100 tops total. That's something that somebody with AI may be very well interested in. So it was an WCCF had that, and I find this whole fascinating. As AMD's trying to make sure that they're breaking into the AI market with these AI Max chips, as well as making sure they're providing enough power and compute in them, that these could be a really interesting way to get into the market. And one thing I've been thinking about a lot with these is eliminate the need of another GPU in that device. And so we'll see where that eventually goes to. But when you keep getting rid of some of this stuff, it seems at some point that you don't need everything that comes, you won't need all the extras. You just have this one integrated chip. I also think that's why Nvidia is going down the route of creating their own ARM CPU with a GPU on it as well, and to break into that market, which makes sense, right? It should be some fun competition, I will say that. Now, WCCF was reporting, and this is a rumor, that the AMD B650 chipsets are discontinued. And this makes sense. The B850 chipset has replaced it, and they say, it was reported that the stock will be, for the next couple months. But basically, B650's end of life for, the manufacturing side. I'm sure AMD is still going to support it. They still support some of the AM4 stuff with chipset drivers, etc. And so this makes sense that 850 is going to be the replacement. They also have that lower 840 as well. And so those will probably take up and pick up the slack in that lower end price range. And so if you're looking for a board, I think at some point these will start tailing off, and the retailers might want to start clearing them out. So you might be able to get a good deal here or there, or as long as they don't be able to feel like that they need to keep them on longer. So I'm sure at some point too the Micro Center deals will also include those 850 boards if that's the case. So I'm sure once that Micro Center deal kind of switches over to 8, we can kind of safely assume that that's when the 650 chipsets are officially retired. So that's what I was thinking about. So let's jump over to Intel, and I was looking at some of their stuff there, and first they had a new Intel Arc driver out. Be sure to go download that if you have the Intel. I just wanted to report on that. There were some new games as well on there, performance improvements, good stuff there. Intel keeps improving the drivers, and I hope that one reason why I hope that Intel continues down the line of developing GPUs is because I hope that they just continue with the driver, even if it is at some point for mostly just integrated stuff. I think having the dedicated GPUs made them focus on trying to really improve it for gaming, and we're seeing the results of that, which I hope that they continue down. And I think if Intel were to move away and do a major pivot from GPU, it would kind of be devastating to that driver going forward. I don't think that Intel would put as much focus in that it has now, which really has opened up an opportunity for them to even go into handhelds and compete against AMD, whereas before I don't think that would be the case as much. You know, they had a good GPU, but when you put it through a whole stack of games, it just wasn't able to stand up to everything else out there. And I don't think that Nvidia ever felt really that threatened. In fact, some of their lower end GPUs, they seem to let users go or let companies still use the old ones because they weren't really that threatened by Intel at the time. So we'll see how it kind of goes, but hopefully they'll get there. Now, Intel also has released or announced, or however Computex was, they're in Computex, right? And they're going up against the AMD's last gen products, right? But they're comparing the new Core Ultra 200H, X, H, and S so you get some workstation products out, and so we'll see. I mean, if I could get my hands on these, this would be kind of interesting. But you know, Intel's still coming out swinging. I think that they want to stay relevant, especially in the mobile sector. And I like to see competition. We'll see where they can jump to in the next generation here with the 300. But you know, they're still putting out products and they're still doing some stuff. So I hope that they will continue down that path. So. We'll see, but you know they're comparing with AMD. They're showing some wins, and if they can get some wins, I think that's good, right? And maybe you know force AMD to even go out and come out swinging more with some more tech stuff. So and better products, which is what we always want as consumers: better products and for good prices. Intel's LGA 1950, that's for the Nova Lake, that's for the next release, is the same dimensions reported by WCCF Tech here as the Intel LGA 1700 and 1851. So if you were worried about that, I suspect then that means there will be a lot of coolers that then automatically just fit on this if they keep the cooler pinout the same. And I think that's good, right? You don't have to go and get another cooler bracket or go hope for the company to release one. You already have it. So that was pretty interesting. Thermalright wants to make AMD mini PCs, and this is the headline from or Thermalright, my bad. This is really interesting what Thermalright did. I was watching this from some reporting from Computex. I believe Gamers Nexus had this as well, and Video Cards is showing it off here as well. That was on there. You know, this is their open box, the mini as well with the AMD AI MAX chips. Really kind of interesting. I really wanted to see somebody just sell a board, ITX board, let me do this, but even with their cooling here, that's something that would fit in a console area, and I'm interested in it, right? These are my things. You get it down to about that $700 range where these other consoles are. Why not buy a box like this, throw it in your media center, and all of a sudden you have something you can play some games on, and you're good to go. That's where I'm kind of leaning towards all this. So we'll see where the price is on all these. I'm sure that they're going to be at first in that $1,000 range if they do come out, because that's where the framework is. That's where I'm blanking on the company. Minisform is as well. That's it. So, But I welcome competition there because you never know. Maybe you can get down to that price range, and building a computer for underneath the console then becomes maybe easier, right? Maybe they release a ITX board with this chip on it, because right now it's not a socketed chip. Maybe you do that, right? It'd be interesting to see, and I welcome it because one, I want to try it out if they can do it. So, what do we got here to end it out here? We got a couple things first. I want to I want to start with some Microsoft stuff because this was kind of interesting. Microsoft, if you're using Windows and you have app updates and everything else, Microsoft kind of wants Windows Update to handle it all. I have been back and forth to think about this since I've read the article. Neilwind had the article, and there's been so many issues through Windows updates. Do you trust the Windows Update platform to just make sure it's always pushing the right updates and it's always good to go? There's been so much stuff, failures of just failing to install updates. Is that on the Windows Update mechanism or what? This is Let me know how you feel because just think if it's not a nice MSI X or a App X package, it's a regular Win32 app. How does that work in this whole mechanism? I I have some good questions. I don't know why this all needed to be integrated into one. Maybe Microsoft has a good idea about this. I let's make this thing, rock solid first, or as rock solid it can be, and I just don't know if that's the case right now. So yeah. There. And then that's the one Windows thing I had. So I also want to talk about this one I don't like. I happen to have T-Mobile, and yeah, I don't know. But WCCF Tech had this, and it was T-Mobile's recording your activity, and it's what is it? The T-Life app. Yeah, screen recording that activity, and without the user's permission. Now, I think this was iOS, but I wouldn't say it wasn't also on Android. Without your permission, this is horrible. T-Mobile, whoever made that decision at T-Mobile should be fired, and I would be perfectly okay with them getting a huge fine because this is unacceptable. They don't they don't have. Remember when they were Uncarrier trying to turn themselves around? That CEO there, he was doing, I think, a pretty good job trying to be upfront, honest, transparent with the users. Since he left, it's never been the same. And this is one of those where you're kind of like, or I'm kind of like, I think I might need to switch, right? It's not going down the right direction. And plus, they had some of the pricing stuff and everything else, and this is this just not great. So let's jump over to some gaming stuff. So this was a good one. This was a good read I saw from it was WCCF had it, and a bunch of other places had it too. So I've read it a couple times. But a Sony or an ex-Sony exec was talking about the Microsoft approach to gaming and their subscriptions in particular. Yeah, they kind of put it, he put it as simply as this: dangerous. And I can see how that is, right? There may not be as much money in the pot for games if everyone is subscribed to it, which could be the case. Well, it is a nice thing where you can go try out a game and see if you might like it. The downside is that if you like it and play the whole thing, you may not go out and buy it if it's in one of these subscription packages. So I get it. We'll see how this all goes, right? I still have my reservations about Game Pass. I know Microsoft's pushing it. I don't have Game Pass, right? One, I don't play enough games in a month to justify the Game Pass subscription. Well, I did have it for a little bit when they had that transition, you could get so many months off if you had Xbox Gold. That was a pretty good deal, but I didn't use it as much as I should have during that time. So, yeah, yikes. But I see where the exec's coming from. We'll have to see how this affects the gaming industry going forward. I do think that one thing outcome of this is games will go up in price. And I would not be surprised if GTA 6 is the first $100 base game, or yeah, $95, $99, someplace in there, for the base game. And Nintendo kind of opened that up for the $80 game to be there as well, so as the standard. So I expect game prices, Microsoft I think raised them too, game prices to go up, and that's going to kind of offset and try to help out the subscription side. And eventually I think the subscription will go up as well, which is, if you keep diminishing the value of Game Pass with increasing the subscription every month, at what point do people start tailing off and then jumping on just buying games to the games that they like to play? So that's some of the thoughts I had. Now, the Switch 2, there's some controversy there, right? Let's talk about this. Nintendo, right? Always got some controversy around it, like they care. They're going to sell their consoles and make a ton of money. I don't think that they really care, but I'm still going to talk about it anyways. I don't like this, where if you get a Switch early, you still need a day one update in order to play games. Okay, that doesn't, I don't like that, right? I get why they're doing it with everything with internet connected, but remember when you were able to get the console only, you had the cartridge or the game and the disc, and you could just go boot it up and play it. You didn't have to worry about this. Everything's so connected these days, they can check everything and kind of diminish the excitement of getting it early. I mean, the excitement, also, one thing I think that you get when somebody were to happen to get it early is excitement about the console that drives around it also picks up, and you get more people interested in it. I think sometimes these companies want to be so tight that they're missing a lot of that. So one last thing about games before we end here today, which is, you guys know I'm a Half-Life fan, and when there's Half-Life news, you're going to get it, because one, my friend makes sure that if I don't actually miss it, and WCCF Tech had this as well, where, and there was a couple other places that had it as well, but this was a rumor from, well, Comic Book had it, but the Daniel RPK says that the Half-Life 3 will be the last entry. Well, hopefully we get it, right? I want to get it first, and hopefully it's a good storyline, and it ends the story, well, and doesn't do something stupid, right? We've all seen some end the series where where it's not a great ending, or it's not a good ending, right? We've all been through that. But if they end it all good and stuff and do it, fine. This is good, and maybe they'll come out with another game at some point. Valve. I enjoyed Valve games overall. So Half-Life 3, though, last entry in the series, you never know, right? We might get promises 3 more episodes and get a couple of them, right? So we'll see. We'll see where this all goes. I mean, I am anticipating a game, and that's one game I'll probably buy right away. So I do enjoy Half-Life a lot. So that is all I have for this week. I hope that if you have any other news or something like that, something I missed, make sure to post in the comments below. I'll be sure to take a look. But thank you so much for watching this week's installment of Tony Tech Topics. I really do appreciate it. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, hit the bell icon, watch some of our videos, as it really does help out the channel. Until next time, God bless.